My presentation will be little exhaustive in a sense that I will cover not only the election, but also about a little bit about Election Commission, its functioning, and some correlated issues which might be of interest to our international friends present today. And before I do that, let me set the context of what this election means to us. If you had the opportunity to look at the newspapers this morning, I have one in my hand, and I think this is it. Heading says, "An election born of blood and tears." That's the heading of today's newspaper. That's the context of this election. You would be aware that Bangladesh has gone through a bloody uprising, which is known as July Uprising of 2024. And 36 July, which effectively is 5th of August, marked the transition into a new dawn. After taking over responsibility, the interim government set out for a new course in our democratic journey. And in that, one of the key features was different reform initiatives, particularly that of constitutional reform and electoral process reforms. Some of those reforms have already been adopted, which did not need any referendum or any other provision, so to say. But the important reforms that constitute constitutional reforms will undergo a referendum. And eventually, therefore, the 13th parliamentary election is not only an election of the parliament, is also going to be a referendum using 2 different ballots on the same day. So that's the context. For our international friends, I'll give a brief overview of what Bangladesh is. People who are here for the first time, it is a country with nearly 180 million people, with an area of 147,570 square kilometers. We have 8 administrative divisions in the country and 64 districts, administrative districts. Our municipal areas include 12 city corporations and 330 municipalities. The country is divided into 300 parliamentary constituencies. So there are 300 seats. Tomorrow we are going to hold election in 299 of them. One had to be dropped because of the demise of a candidate as per law. Bangladesh has a parliamentary democracy, and you are all aware of that. President is the head of the state and the Prime Minister heads the government. That is the existing structure. It has a unicameral parliament. By the way, the referendum also includes the bicameral structure. As the Chief Election Commissioner has already indicated, we have 356 in the parliament. That include 50 seats reserved for the women. And tenure of the parliament is 5 years. Our system is that of first past the post. It is a multi-party democracy, and each MP, a member of parliament, is elected from its relevant constituency. The 50 female candidates are elected as of the provision that exists today by the 300 other members. Just to add with the Chief Election Commissioner, the schedule was declared on 11th of December. Nominations were filed on or before 29th of December 2025, followed by its scrutiny in next 5 days. Candidates were allowed time to withdraw candidature if they wanted to. More than 300 withdrew, and that last day of withdrawal was 20th of January. 21st of January was the day when the lists were finalized and symbols were assigned to the individual candidates and campaigning began. The campaigning for the election was for 19 days to be exact, and the poll is due tomorrow. We have approximately 128 million voters, and given the number, in 2026, the election in Bangladesh is the largest election anywhere in the world. I know the international election management bodies have gone through a hectic schedule in 2024-25, which was known as super year for election. But this is super year for Bangladesh and maybe for many more. 69 returning officers have been assigned, covering 299 constituencies. They are being assisted by 598 assistant returning officers. We have 42,950 polling stations that include 299 postal ballot polling stations, and in-person polling stations will have booths. Every polling station has number of booths. So total number of booths will be 246,728. Just to give you an assessment of the number of polling officials, other than the returning officer and the assistant returning officer, close to 0.8,800,000 polling officials will be involved in conduct of the election. That includes one presiding officer for each of the polling stations. That comes to around 42,950. 246,000 plus assistant presiding officer and close to 500,000 polling officers. To give you a little bit of breakdown of the candidates, a total of 2,028 candidates are participating in 299 constituencies. That include 81 female, around 4% to be exact. And of these 2,028 candidates, majority are from political parties. 50 political parties are participating in this. Around 1,750 from political parties, and rest independent candidates are participating in the election. Ladies and gentlemen, the legal framework for election process in Bangladesh includes the constitutional provision, election-related laws and rules, administrative laws and rules, and other relevant laws and rules as it exists today. If you have, particularly members of the electoral management bodies, if you have interest in knowing, I would refer you to the Representation of the People's Order of 1972, which has been amended up to 2025, Political Parties Registration Rules of 2008, Conduct Rules for Political Parties and Candidates corrected up to 2025, Independent Candidates Rule of 2011, Reserved Seats for Women Election Act of 2004, Constituencies Act of 2021 amended or rather corrected up to 2025, and Election Officers Special Provision Act of 1991 amended in 2025. Besides, for the officials of the Election Commission conducting the election, there is a rule called Election Conduct Rule amended up to 2025. For the observers and media personnel, both from home and abroad, we have guidelines. And these guidelines are given in booklets. I have those in hands. I am sure you are in possession of this. If you are not, I would request you to collect one from our colleagues here. Okay. These guidelines are rather unchanged for people who have participated before. Only there have been few amendments related to covering different areas, related to staying inside the polling station. As a broad guideline, if I may tell you, observers and media personnel can enter any polling station as per the accreditation, can carry their camera or the cell phone, can take photograph, make videos, there's no problem. There's only one restriction. Inside the polling booth where the voters are casting their vote, you can film, but you cannot interview somebody and you cannot telecast live. Those are the two limitations. Otherwise, you can go anywhere, carry your camera and take pictures. You can interview people waiting in the queue, there's no problem. You can make live telecast from there, there's no problem. Okay. To talk a little bit about Election Commission, the Commission is sitting right here. It's composed of 5 members, headed by the Chief Election Commission. Our assignment, as given in the Constitution, include holding election to the office of the President, holding elections of the members of the Parliament, delimitation of the constituencies for the purpose of election of the Parliament, preparation of the electoral rolls, and any other function that is prescribed by the Constitution or any other law. This might go through a small modification after the constitutional provisions have been amended. To talk a little bit about pre-election activities. For this Election Commission, it has been quite intense. We started with the updating of the voter list, and just to give you an appreciation, since the young voters lost interest in voting, we found a big number did not even register as a voter. And we have been able to include 4.5 million dropped voters in the list. We also brought about change in the Voter List Act. Previously, it used to be the first of every year, 1st of January, when one could qualify to be entered in the list. But we brought about a change, and the new provision says that a date selected by the Election Commission is also okay for one to be included in the voter list. And accordingly, 15th of October has been the date we selected, and we have been able to include more than 1.2 million young voters in the list who would have been otherwise dropped out if we maintained the previous law. So, updating of the voter list was our first of the activities, and just to include one more line, we also found more than 2 million deads in the voter list. So we could drop them out. There was a increasing difference between the number of female voters with that of the male voters. Female voters were almost 3 million lesser in number than the male voters. After intense activities and awareness programs, we have been able to reduce that gap significantly. Our next activity was primary selection of the polling stations. And as you know, these go through continuous upgradation and checking, because and it goes through a change even in the last hour, depending on who is vying where and whether or not a particular candidate has influence over an area or not. Boundary delimitation was our next major activity, and it takes a long time. We completed that. Registration of political parties. Usually, this registration takes place before the election. However, one can float a political party and get registered anytime. But as a matter of practice here in Bangladesh, the intensity increases, particularly when the election nears. So this time also, there were dozens of applications, and of them, 10 new political parties have emerged. The total number of registered political parties with the Election Commission today stands at 60. Of them, 50 are participating in the election. Then we undertook continuous amendments to the laws and regulation. And just to give you an appreciation, the Consensus Commission was working on the separately at a different platform, and we were getting input from that end, and then we picked up those that did not need any political consultation and straightway adopted in our laws and rules. However, there are other recommendations which might take time, maybe post-election, following the referendum, this will come into being. We undertook series of dialogues with stakeholders, and that include media, observer groups, women organizations, disabled organizations, international organizations, and last but not the least, the political parties. It also included the members of the civil society, including the academia. And this took a very long time, and we got invaluable input from them for this election. Logistic planning and execution is another mammoth task, and it has been undertaken at due time, and this took no less than, I think, 9 months to complete the logistic preparation. And we must acknowledge the contribution of UNDP and the member states contributing to the UNDP's ballot project, which contributed significantly in our logistic preparation. Training of officials is another important activity that we undertake. And this is a very long process. This includes training of all. I told you that there are 800,000 officials. All of them had to undergo training of the sort. And this is done following the train the trainer model. So we train the trainer, and subsequently the trainers train the rest. We had to also impart training for the first time for conduct of the postal ballot. This is a new experience, and we found, as we walked through, new experiences coming through every day. Last but not the least was postal ballot. And just taking cue from what I said moments back, this was a very new experience to us. I'll spend a minute here. We undertook exercise based on commitment made by our Honorable Chief Advisor. He committed to the nation on 16th of December 2024 that he will ensure a right for voting for the overseas Bangladeshis. And he said, we have been making this commitment, but we have never been able to implement it. We want implementation this time, and we want adoption of an affordable system. So accordingly, the Election Commission undertook this exercise. We invited all experts from home and abroad, involved our reputed universities and academic institutions, and came up with, finally, after consulting the political parties, the postal ballot supported by IT. The key feature of this is registration was done online, and voting is half online and mainly offline manual. How is that? After the registration is done, which used to be a manual affair in the bygone days, the individual voters are sent with a ballot paper. Ballot paper contains 2 ballot papers, one for the national election and one for the referendum. There's an instruction included in it, and there is a declaration in it. So, voter, upon receipt of the ballot, would do a live verification. Now, this is the half of the voting, to ensure that the ballot has reached the intended hand and nobody else, in order to ensure integrity of the vote. And after that, they cast their vote and return the ballot directly to the returning officer. And our voters don't have to pay a penny. Government of Bangladesh, vis-a-vis Election Commission, is paying for the postage of these votes. You know, particularly the members of the EMBs present here, that diaspora voting is not an easy thing. The global inclusion rate is only 2.7%. Only 2.7%. And postal ballot is again another difficult area where global wastage rate is 24%. We are anticipating, if not lower, close to 24 or even more wastage rate in our case as well. Because of the stringent policy we have, we are not allowing the ballots to be handed over to an individual other than the voter. There were occasions in this time we found, particularly in Middle East, where our voters live in camp-like environment, where 50, 100 people stay in one place. So the postal department sometimes delivered all 50 ballots in one place, and that created some confusion, and we stopped immediately. We said no, it had to be handed over to the individual. For this, some of the voters may never receive their ballots, and we can see it online. We can track the number of the ballots, and we can see there is a wastage there. Anyway, coming back to the management of the postal ballots, majority of the ballots are already returned to the returning officers. Close to 900,000 ballots of 1.5 million ballots have already been received by the returning officers. We are hoping a big number will go today and up to 4:30 tomorrow, which is the cutoff time for receiving the postal ballot. Any ballot coming after 4:30 tomorrow, which is the closure time for in-person voting as well, that ballot is not going to be accepted. If you have any questions on this, I can highlight subsequently. Okay. How would the voter list look like? I'm sure it will be difficult for you to see from there, but just to give you an appreciation, this is the voter list that is with the polling officials. It contains the picture of the voter, the details of the voter, and the voters who have applied for postal ballot. Those are marked with watermark on top, so that the individuals who have registered for postal ballot do not show up in person for in-person voting. They are not allowed for in-person voting. Okay. Just a little bit about the arrangement in the polling station. Our polling stations are usually secondary or primary schools or colleges. It also includes some of the cyclone center, particularly in the coastal areas. Very few other facilities. There would be one or two temporary polling stations as well. Each of the polling station has an area where voters can queue up, generally a small field. Polling station include at least 6 polling booths or more, depending on the number of voter in that particular polling station. Average voters in a polling station is around 3,000. It could be little more, little less. Around 31,000 polling stations are common for male and female. Around 5,000 each are only dedicated for the male and female, where practicable. Where male and female polling stations are in one place, the female booth is separated from the male booth in order to cater for the cultural realities of the country. Okay. Every polling booth, I told you, if I may recall again, the polling station has one presiding officer. So there is one presiding officer for every single polling station. Now, if the polling station has 6 booths, every booth will have an assistant presiding officer and 2 polling officers. So in every booth there will be 3 polling officials. Besides the polling officials, every booth will have polling agents deputed by the candidates, contesting candidates. Now this is where we sometimes find that some of the candidates may not be able to, rally as many or marshal as many agents. That's up to their capability. But generally speaking, all the major contestants have their agents present. Okay. As the Chief Election Commissioner has already indicated, tomorrow the polling begins at 7:30 in the morning. It generally used to be 8 o'clock in the morning and finishing at 4 o'clock. We have extended the time by half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the afternoon to cater for the additional time required to cast the ballot for referendum as well. Besides, previously there used to be one marking place in every booth, the secret chamber where the voter would mark the ballot. This time we have 2 marking place in every booth, so that the voters do not get stranded in the queue. Prior to beginning of the voting, the boxes would be shown open in front of the agents and then locked with a numbered lock, plastic numbered lock, zip lock. The voting will continue. After a box is filled, an additional lock is placed there, numbered and kept by the side. The whole exercise takes place in front of the polling officials and the polling agents. It is only the secret chamber or the marking place where nobody has any access and nobody can use cell phone there. I told you that there will be 3 levels for people visiting polling stations tomorrow, what you are expecting to see. As a voter enters inside a polling booth, he or she would be received by the first polling official who will confirm the identity of the voter. And this has to be a positive identification. There were questions whether or not somebody can have a veil. No. The polling officer has to confirm that it is the individual voter. And then the next polling officer will, loudly utter the name of the voter. Agents will confirm. Usually agents are local guys. They know most of the people. They will also confirm from their list that yes, it is the voter. And a indelible ink will be, marked on any of the fingers of the voter. Subsequently, the assistant presiding officer will issue 2 ballots. And on the ballot, on the counterfoil of the ballot, the individual voter either has to sign or put a thumb impression. And on the back of the ballot, original ballot, the assistant presiding officer will put a seal, numbered seal, and put his initial. That's how the integrity of the ballot is ensured. That anyone, attempting to do a forgery and placing a fake ballot will not go through. Okay. So that's the activity in the voting area. Counting. The counting of the vote begins immediately after the polling has been concluded. There will be some polling stations where you could have waiting queue even after 4:30. If that is the case, as per law, all the voters within the enclosure will be allowed to finish casting their vote. Once it has been done, then only the counting will commence. The presiding officer will choose one of the rooms, bring all the boxes in that room and start the count. This time, our both ballots are being counted simultaneously. Mentionably, the ballot for the national election is white in color and the ballot for the referendum is pink in color. Both ballots are being dropped in the same box by the voter. So when the counting begins, you offload the boxes, segregate the white in one side and pink in one side and start counting. A reason for this is, if you allow the national election to be counted first, the ballot for the national election to be counted first, you will find most of the agents would leave the room before you start the counting of the pink ballots. And if you do other way around, there will be hue and cry as if the result is being deliberately delayed. So that is the reason for which both ballots are being counted simultaneously. You could have one question, how long it takes for the ballots to be counted? Not long, maybe 4-5 hours. So we are expecting most of the results coming in by early morning tomorrow, midnight to early morning tomorrow, except maybe few distant centers from where it takes a little longer for the travel time. And usually here in Bangladesh, you will find our brothers in media, they would come to know first, because our declaration takes place little late. The presiding officer gets the result sheet signed by the agents and it is declared at the center. It is hung in the center. A copy is hung in the notice board right there. Everybody can see. So it is now a public document. People can, give it away. And eventually they do. But for election commission to declare, it has to go through two other steps. The result from the presiding officer is handed over to the assistant returning officer. Assistant returning officer then makes an online entry of it. uploads the result sheet, the copy of the result sheet online. Returning officer endorses it, and only then the election commission officially declares it. But however, assistant returning officer in his office also make one declaration. So, unofficial results keep coming in quite early. Official results take usually little time. There's another phase that is called compilation of the result. Result of each of the centers, say every constituency include, say close to, how many, 150 centers, polling stations. So 150 polling stations have been declared individually, but there is a requirement to compile the result next morning, where returning officer in presence of the candidates or their agents will compile the result in a separate form and get it signed and sign himself. That becomes the final official document based on which the gazette is published by the Election Commission. Okay. To talk a little bit about electoral dispute management, I'll just be very brief on this. There's a High Court bench dedicated for the purpose, and it has already been formed. Usually, a candidate can file a petition within 45 days from the declaration of the result, from the date of election, within 45 days. And the High Court bench, upon hearing the case, can give any of the four verdicts. Reject the petition, accept the petition and declare him or her or some other candidate as winner, and declare the entire election to be void. Any of the result, depending on if there was any irregularity, proven irregularity. Okay. I'll not go much into it. Election expenses could be of interest to some of you, our international friends. There's a ceiling imposed, either 2.5 million Bangladeshi taka or at the rate taka 10 for every elector in a particular constituency. Whichever is higher is the ceiling for a candidate to spend. Let me explain a little bit. If a constituency has 300,000 voters, so every candidate can spend 3 million Bangladeshi taka as election expense. Taka 10 per voter. That's the rate. And if the number is less than 250,000, hardly there is any, one or two, then the ceiling is 25 lakhs, 2.5 million. How do we ensure the compliance of it? They had to submit. There are 3 steps to confirm this. Initially, at the time of submission of nomination, they had to show the sources of funding, and this is as per law. Subsequently, the sources would be audited. Within 30 days from the closure of the election, they have to submit a detailed report of their expenditure, which is again audited. Sometimes this is where some gray areas lie, but usually this is the practice. Okay. I will cover a few miscellaneous points and then end my talk and take your questions. Just for your knowing, we have 9,000 plus, close to 10,000 journalists covering this election, and this number is going up even by as I talk. Some of them are yet to be accredited, and the process is ongoing. To talk about observers, the numbers will be more than 40,000. More than 40,000. Yes. Okay. Few miscellaneous points. Security. We have a comprehensive security structure in place. More than 900,000 men and women from the law enforcement agencies are deployed to cover the election. For our international friends, feel free to move anywhere. Bangladesh is a very safe place. But should you feel the necessity, get in touch with police and take assistance. But usually there has never been an incident where any international observer or a journalist faced any physical threat. And we hope this is not going to be the case either. For you who are visiting Chittagong Hill Tracks, there is a different protocol there, and please follow the protocol as prescribed by the returning officer, because that is a hilly area and there remain some security challenges, but it's not unmanageable, it's all good. Only thing is you have to follow the protocol. Insofar your movement is concerned, feel free to move anywhere as per your accreditation, and you will be entertained there. You can stay for as long as you want in any of the places conforming to your guideline. Let me stop right there and take questions if there is any. Thank you.
72 ঘন্টা ময়েশ্চার লক সমৃদ্ধ লিলি বডি ওয়াশ শিয়া বাটারের গুডনেস স্কিন রিপেয়ার করে রাখে সফট ও গ্লোয়িং।